If you're listening to this podcast, there's a good chance that you're a hunter or you just enjoy the great outdoors. Now's the time to step up. There have been countless efforts to vilify hunters, denounce the legitimacy of the science-based wildlife management model. There's no science to this stance, and it is solely emotionally charged. We don't want to see what happened with the grizzly hunt replay itself again with the remaining large carnivores and big game species. It's a slippery slope, folks. We need to stand together. Now is the time for hunters to be united across all organizations and show our combined support. Please go to wildsheepsociety.com/act now and follow the steps. It doesn't take much time and it will help save the future of hunting. This applies to residents and non-residents alike. Please, let's use our voice and be heard. On with the show, folks. This is episode 24 of the Wilderness Locals podcast. On this episode, I sit down with Jeff Agostinho. Jeff is an accomplished hunter and a passionate conservationist. This podcast is brought to you by Kifaru International, the toughest hunting gear on the planet, bar none. Frontiersman gear, high quality, completely custom handmade knives made in the heart of the Peace Country. And as always, we're brought to you by Just Shooting Arrows, BC's premier archery shop.
Yeah, I mean, you go with what makes sense based on what's best for the animals, right?
Yeah.
And that's from what biologists tell us. That's from what research tells us. That's it's not based on what they're proposing of this social license. I had a pretty interesting conversation on this whole social license idea too today, and I don't know. There's a lot of perspectives even to look at that and why it could be at where it's at, and are hunters to blame? Of course, we're to blame for why it's got to that, but we're just in such a weird spot, and it's pretty scary when you think about it too.
Yeah, when I was after I sent you that invite, I kind of always keep whoever I'm with's Instagram up on my phone. So as we're going, I generally look through them, and it always pops up questions for me. But when you were logging in here, I saw there was a post on here, and it was like a real nice muley that you had shot. And being a hunter, my first thing was, oh, rad, nice muley, cool. And then I hit the comments, and there's a dude on here, and he's like, stop killing these animals. And then it's 4 or 5 guys responding, and a couple of guys fire back with the standard internet response, which is man, shut up, you don't know what you're talking about. And then you responded and you said something eloquent along the lines of hey man, I don't think you understand what you're saying, every part of this animal was used, yada yada yada. Gave him the whole this is why we do it. Sure, I enjoy the chase, I enjoy the adventure, but that's how I get my food, man. And the guy was the guy ends up saying, he's man, you totally changed my perspective on this. I had no idea. I thought you guys just shoot these things and take the horns, and we need more of that, man. So, I mean, that might even be a good point to start this thing. You're a young dude. You're 25, you said, right?
Yeah, just turned 26, actually. I forget that. But yeah, just turned 26 last month.
So you're a pretty insightful dude for being 26.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of been in I've been in Vancouver. I've worked, I came out of high school, did a bit of post-secondary, and went right into a job where I was generally working with people that were older than me. So it kind of forced me to elevate in terms of where I was at with just insight and my language, and how to frame words and how to frame sentences in a way. So I don't know, I've just tried to take that and translate it into hunting as best as possible and what we do. And just on that post, how we frame stuff and how we decide to say things is so important in the long run.
Yeah. And
there's so many messages that we need to get across. It's not just one message, I feel like.
Yep.
There's just multiple messages. And I know we weren't going to talk too much about this, but one of the biggest things I've been talking to hunters about a little bit too is hey, I know we use food, a lot of us hunt for food, and we use the food and we love the food, but that's not the whole story. And I feel we need to be real and we need to be raw with what we do and show that whole story. Right. I mean, we don't, go mountain hunting and chase mountain game just for the food. We chase it for the adventure. We chase it for every aspect of what we're doing when we're out there. So I feel like it's important that we share that whole message and tell the whole story and not just, bits and pieces of it.
Yeah. I mean, when I look back on a hunt, I very rarely, the first thing I think of is not like, pulling the trigger, letting the arrow fly. It's normally like all the stuff leading up to that. And then like all the suck factor that you experience the whole time, and it's like, I think about the mule deer hunt that I did this past year with my hunting mentor, Ronnie, that I bring up all the time on this thing. And we were talking about him today. But I think about that hunt, and I think about the bag that I had never zipped myself into before that trip, and it didn't fit over my shoulders. Like, that's what I think about. I froze for 6 days, right? Like, it's a funny story.
Yeah.
Whenever I talk to Ronnie about hunting now he busts my chops every time. Like, hey man, make sure you zip yourself into a mummy bag before we go. Okay. And it's like,
no doubt.
I mean,
that's awesome.
It's all about stories, I think. And, I mean, that's why we're here. We're here to share some stories. So, I first ran into you, from Journal of Mountain Hunting, and you had just shot your first, your first California bighorn.
Rocky, but yeah.
Oh, okay. You shot your first Rocky.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think from there, I looked you up and I started following you, and, that story spoke to me in a lot of ways. So on this thing, we generally start these things by saying, like, who are you? What do you do? And how did you get started hunting?
Yeah. So, I mean, my name's Jeff, so everyone's going to know that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I've been hunting my whole life and been going on trips as far as back as I can remember. Starting back from my grandfather, he came from Europe and they hunted back there when they were young.
Cool.
He brought it over here. Yeah. And then it was kind of that thing with him passing on to my old man, my dad, and a lot of moose hunting, right? Like the big week-long 10-day moose trips were the things that they always look forward to every year, and they always planned everything around.
Yeah.
So that in my younger days, that was kind of what I always looked forward to, or just getting away for weekend trips with my old man. And then when I was 10, obviously I got my license, and I took my first buck the very first year I had my license, and I was hooked at that point. Yeah, man. I remember my old man still talks about this story. I was probably, I don't know, grade 6, grade 7, and they planned their like week-long moose trip. And my godfather, his wife, my dad, my mom, they were all going, and they were leaving me with my grandparents for this week. And so they were like dropping us off on the Saturday morning before they were heading out. And I like full on had a freak, like panic attack. Like I started pretending like, hey, I didn't want to be left alone just because I wanted to go hunting so bad. I just started creating all these stories and freaking out and just trying to do anything I could to get on that trip. And like, I was young. I was 11 or 12, like grade 6, grade 7. Just wanted to do anything I could to get on that trip. Like I was hooked from that moment. And, it just kind of progressed from there. A lot of trips with my dad, and some of the younger guys that my dad hunted with kind of started taking me out as I got to that age where it was kind of cool. My parents were like, yeah, you can kind of go out on your own. And they kind of took me under their wing a little bit and took me into the mountains as much as they could on weekend trips and stuff like that. And it's just constantly growing. I've had a lot of good mentors and good people that have wanted to take me out. And so as soon as I pretty much finished high school, I was like, hey, this fall, like I need to get on a 10-day trip of some sort. And I did a mountain. Well, I didn't have a tag, but I did a mountain goat hunt first year out of high school with a buddy, and just kicked my ass. Like I had no idea what I was getting myself into as an 18-year-old kid. That's you get
awesome.
the basic gear that you need, or you think you need, and everything fails you. And like whatever, but it is what it is, and you love it. Every moment's great, even though it's, there's aspects that are going to suck. And it's funny, I looked down at, on that trip, I'll never forget, I was hiking up the mountain. So 3-4 hours in, and I went to slide underneath a log, and my wrist caught this jagged rock that was sticking out, and it like cut me right open on my wrist, and I can look back. I still have the scar to this day, and I look back on it. And I remember it as my like first kind of mountain hunt, right? Like my mark from my first mountain hunt. So yeah, I find that super cool. And I mean, that's 8 years ago now, but yeah.
That's wicked. So you kind of right out of the gate on your own, you guys went straight to mountain stuff. So I was going to ask you, how did you get into mountain hunting? But it sounds like it's something you had your eye on for a long time.
Yeah, I had friends that, you know, a little bit older than me that had taken stone sheep and done other sorts of trips and been on those kinds of trips. And I'd always look forward to being able to go. And like, I was always nervous about it. But yeah, as soon as I was out of high school and I had the time and the ability to kind of play with my own schedule,
yeah,
I was like right into it. I'm like, I didn't know much. I didn't know areas. I didn't know, you know, where you need to go to look for mountain goats. I just, I knew I wanted to get into the mountains and experience it, because I'd go by their places and, you know, they have, whether it's their taxidermy or pictures on the wall from trips that they had gone on. And I'm like, I want that. Right. So yeah, right away, I knew that I wanted to get out there. I'd shot a decent mule deer when I was probably 16 with my old man. And so that was my like one piece. I had one piece of taxidermy that I always looked up to and was so proud of it. I was like, you know, I want to get out there and really chase some of these, you know, more mature mountain animals. So.
Yeah. And so when was your first successful mountain hunt then?
It would have been 2013. We would have done that hunt. And that was just an ass kicker. We didn't even see a goat on that trip. Came back 2014. 2015. We pulled a tag up in Region 6. A bunch of us, or not a bunch of us, 3 of us all pulled caribou tags.
Cool.
I had a grizzly tag. And so we flew into the Spatsizi.
Yep.
That park's huge, right?
Yeah.
In looking for goats, and I had the grizzly tag, and so that was my first fly in, another mountain hunt, and like a lot more involved than what the first kind of couple had been in terms of, you know, we were not. We were kind of completely on our own at the hands of a pilot, and that's really the only way out from there. But yeah, my hunting partner then shot a caribou on the 6th day, 16K back.
Oof.
That was my first time ever packing, like, you know, a decent sized animal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those caribou are a lot bigger than I think a lot of people think.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that either. We shot the bull at probably, 4 p.m. Got them all quartered out, made camp there. And then that night we got a storm roll in, and we get up in the morning, we start hiking out with the first load, and we're probably halfway out, and I'm already feeling it. And we're following a horse trail, and all of a sudden I hear this this big breath of air right behind me. And like, you know, the idea of grizzly bear is always in your head when you're out there.
Yeah.
So I had like one of those quick releases on my rifle, and first thing I do, I reach for that and I spin around thinking there's a bear, because I got meat on my back and my buddy's 30 feet ahead of me. And I spin around, grab for the rifle, and it's the Wranglers from the outfitter.
Yeah.
And they're coming back with their string of horses and 2 bull moose behind them. And I'm like, man, you guys didn't think to maybe yell out behind me? And they're at this point 10 feet behind me.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that'll scare you for
funny.
Sure.
Anyway, they end up, oh yeah. I mean, 19, 20 years old. And just the idea of grizzly bears is always in your head. And hadn't had any experience with them at that point. So that gave me a little bit of a shock. But yeah, they ended up blowing past us. And like I said, it was a storm. We had that storm last night. It was raining that day. And I mean, you get 6 horses that go through that trail. Oh man, that was, they mucked it up pretty good. And the rest of the way back, I didn't even have gaiters. Like, you know, I didn't think back then that gaiters were a thing.
Yeah.
So I remember getting back to the lake that day, and I mean, right up to probably just above my knees was just covered in mud, and get back to the lake and sit down and I look at my buddy. And I'm like, man, I don't know how I feel about this. And I went and took a nap for a little bit because we didn't have enough time to get back out there. So we were spending that night at the lake and then going to go back for the next load the next day. And I nap for about half an hour, and I woke up and stepped out onto the beach of the lake, and I'm like, this is just so awesome. Like, I love this. I just did all that work. You know, we got all this meat sitting here at the lake. And at that point, the clouds had kind of broke and the sun was coming out just like for sunset, or the sun was peeking through sunset. And yeah, I mean, I'll never forget that feeling, and just the feeling of success on a mountain hunt. I mean, the next couple of days of getting the rest of the meat out sucked. And but yeah, it was good. I was hooked.
It's crazy how even when you're so beat up on those backpack hunts, like you get so beat up and you get so worn down, and like you have a nice little nap in the afternoon, and then you get back out of your tent and it's like, this is the best. Like I know the exact feeling that you're talking about. And like in my normal life, I don't ever nap. Like I don't ever rest until bedtime. But when I'm like all beat up on the side of the mountain, it's like I could go for a quick half an hour of shut eye, and just like you feel so good and you're just so happy. And like I know the exact feeling you're talking about, man. It's the best. It's also impossible to describe, right?
It is. I don't know. Yeah, there's no way to really describe it, but I just find those naps out in the mountains, like they're needed. They feel great and they're super rejuvenating.
Yeah.
But
and being out there, like being disconnected from the world a little bit too, right? There's something about that.
Absolutely.
So you guys finished up there, and what's next for you? It sounds like stuff has progressed.
Yeah, at that point, so that was 2015. We came out, we did a little bit of elk hunting and some deer hunting that year. And then 2016, I really wanted to get after mule deer again. Like I had this thing, I really wanted to take a good mule deer buck. The first one I took was right around 150, and my cousin had taken one.
That's a good buck.
Yeah, my cousin had taken one that was about 155, and I was like, I got to beat that number. So then that year I just kind of focused on hunting mule deer, and I used to be pretty big into bird hunting too, like chukar and pheasant. I have a dog too.
Cool.
2016 was a big year of bird hunting and then just mountain mule deer hunting. And I really love hunting the rut. Like as soon as that snow hits the ground, I don't think there's anything quite like it. But so that year I took the buck that's behind me. He grossed like 169 or 170. And that's like 163. Cool. And like, I was just so proud at that moment. Like it was just one of the most awesome things ever. And I was super proud of that.
I think that's a kind of a once in a lifetime buck for most dudes in BC.
Oh yeah. Like I only have one buddy that has and I've like of all my friends closer friends that hunt, a good friend has a 190, but other than that, that 170 mark in BC is pretty.
Yeah, I think a 190 is like an anomaly out here, right? Like,
here.
I feel like most dudes are shooting like 120 to 140, and like that's good, like that's great.
Yeah,
those are nice deer, but like that 170 behind you, that's a great BC deer, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's super cool, and in that area where I was hunting, like they have very set genetics, very common genetics, and a friend of mine had taken a buck the week before. That has it was like a mid 140s, but with the exact same genetics, and we were looking at it, and then a week later I took that guy, and I'm like, holy, like these bucks are identical, really weak G2. Like his G2s are not great, but his G4s, like he's just got like 12-inch G4s. It might be hard to tell there, but super cool and really good mass, and I was super pumped with that buck. And once I took that, like I think there's something to be said about taking like a mature animal, like the feeling of when you take that mature animal, like it's just it's something else in my opinion, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, for sure. Well, they make less mistakes, right? I mean, me and you were kind of talking earlier about my elk pursuit there, and I hunt them in a 6-point zone, and it's like those elk they're switched on. They didn't get old by getting eaten by something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or by making mistakes. So
no, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
It plays into that challenge.
It's interesting. Yeah, for sure. I mean, not to say there's anything wrong with shooting a younger deer. I mean, if the kind, For sure. That's an interesting point that you made about like the difference in genetics between areas. It's funny when you talk to some of these old guys, or you like show them a picture of a deer or something, they'll know exactly where you are based off how their rack's set up. Yeah. I've had that happen a couple times with elk and with mule deer in BC.
Really, with elk too?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Like there's a couple of areas in the Kootenays where it doesn't really produce 6 points. So there's like really big 5 points. And some of those big royal points and stuff like that, right? But yeah, there's some other areas too. It's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, I've run into that quite a bit. I mean, I'm pretty limited with elk. I haven't done a ton of elk hunting. And all the hunting I've done has been pretty specific to one area, but yeah, it's just, and we've only done October elk hunting, and just September I'm always doing something else. So it's only ever been in October, between that 10th and 20th mark. And we're just running in every year that we've been out there. It's just 5 points everywhere, just running into 5 points all the time. But
that like 10th to the 20th time is tough too. Like it's sort of kind of post rut, sort of getting to post rut, kind of like end of second estrus,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's tough then, because a lot of the big boys have peeled off by then, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what it seems like. I mean, I caught up with, it was interesting, probably it would have been 2017. I was in there and we were seeing tons of elk, like tons and tons of elk. And again, lots of fives. I think we counted 14 5 points in 8 days or something like that. It was ridiculous. But I had one morning where I'd come out and we were at the base camp and I was just beat down. It was like 5 days in and I was like, I'm not getting up early this morning. I just kind of want to relax this morning. And so I just went out for a cruise. I just jumped in my Jeep and went out for a cruise. It's like 9 o'clock in the morning and I'm cruising just one of these small dirt roads. I think it was the last day of turkey season. I might've been going to look for a turkey at like 9 in the morning, and these two bulls run out right in the middle of the road. And like, I knew the area pretty well. And I was kind of in between. There was like a kilometer of public land in between two pretty big farms. And so these two bulls blow out, and like I'm in my Jeep, right? Just the last place I ever expect to see elk. And both these bulls stop broadside, look at me at like 100 yards, and I can't get a count on them quick enough. Jump out, grab the rifle. I had a reed in my, probably just right on the dash. I grabbed it, quickly threw it in my mouth and let a couple chirps go. Bombed into the timber, and one of the bulls just pipes up. And I'm like, okay, well, I know I got only about 800 yards to try and cut him off and get a count before he hits the private. And he was just screaming right until, and then I caught up with him and I watched them jump the fence, hit the private. And one was a small, probably like 230 inch 6 point. And the other one was probably pushing 300. They were both sixes. And they just cruised right out onto the private and just stood out there and looked at me, and that bull kept screaming. I thought that was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had elk hunting, and it all came from cruising an FSR at 9 o'clock in the morning.
It's funny, man, like how some of those chances come up. Like I've had the same thing happen, like where I hunt elk, we're, I don't know, probably 10K down a dirt road, bail out of the truck, and then hike back, like, I don't know, between 8 and 10K, right? And I've had the same thing happen on the road, like go through a washout in my truck and then come up over the next rise and there's like an elk peeling up the hill. I'm like, what? Why are you here? Why are you not way in the back where I'm hunting you? No, I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast, but at the end of elk season last year, I was walking out. This is like one of the last days of season. I was walking out and I was just chirping along, and I was kind of like half paying attention, like just kind of just walking out, like expecting nothing to come of it. And like when I'm elk hunting, like I always have a diaphragm in my mouth, right? And I like did like, a chirp, came around a corner and about got ran over by this bull, like just out of nowhere, right? Yeah. I'm like, what the hell? And like no time to counter anything, but like big mature bull, and like I know elk in that area pretty well, so I had a good idea of which bull it was. And I was like, oh, that sucks. Okay, whatever. Continue to walk to the road, hop in the truck, drive down the road, and then the bull runs across the road in front of me, like almost gets run over. Like he's just like asking for it. But
That's wild.
It's
I find with
crazy.
elk that seems that's not that uncommon with elk to. I mean, depending on where you're hunting them, if you're, I mean, in BC we have roads everywhere, so it's not uncommon to bump them in some roads in some areas. But
yeah, for sure. And like there's some of the areas that I hunt in the blocks of timber. There's like some good roads through it, and like you'll find them use the roads. I mean, animals are like us, right? They want to take the path of least resistance. Sometimes if there's not pressure, they use them for sure.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
why wouldn't they?
Yeah, for sure. Nice. So you have done some elk hunting. That's cool, man. So then when did the sheep vein get tapped? Because you're big into the sheep.
Yeah. So 2017, a good friend of my dad's she'd taken a stone. The year I took that buck, he took his first bighorn, and he was just talking to me about it. And he's like, you got to get into the sheep hunting. Like, you're young, you're in shape. And he's like, and at that point I hadn't, looked into it too much. And that year I started looking into WSSBC, getting a little bit more involved, and talking to him a bit more. And he was going to show me a little bit. And then I drew a 2017. I drew a Grizz tag. That was my second one I had drawn. And it was in an area where I knew there was a pretty decent population of goats too. So I'm like, this year, I'm probably not going to focus on sheep or start to do the sheep thing. But I was going to focus on that. And so I went up and did my Grizz hunt, and we looked for some goats, came back with nothing. I made this mistake of passing up on a younger boar. And then, of course, 2 months later, the season or grizzly bear hunting gets shut down in BC. But But anyway, I got back from that trip mid-September, and I kind of found myself like, hey, I don't really have much to going on. So I called my friend there that he's a mentor to me, and just asked him some questions, and he gave me some pointers, and I jumped on Google Earth, said I'm going to try the sheep thing out, and so that season, late September, I went out for my first 2-3 days kind of by myself. And it wasn't like I wasn't backpacking into anything. I was checking some areas where I could access it in day hikes and do that. And just spots I'd learned from him and on Google Earth. And that was my first experience with sheep, like while you're actually hunting. Cause I mean, you see them on the roads, and it's just not the same in my opinion, but I did. No. I did about a 2-hour hike into this one spot and stopped and pulled out my little camp stove and started making myself lunch. And I'll never forget, a full destroy to so many people, but all of a sudden I hear a couple rocks roll off, and I'm like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And I look over, and there's these rams. These 2 rams are kind of coming over this little bit of a rise. They're walking right towards me. I got the wind in my favor, and they don't even know I'm there. And the feeling of being within 100 yards of these sheep, and looking back on it now, they were nowhere near legal rams. They were 3-4 years old. But just like, I got so excited. I was using a borrowed spotting scope. Like, I didn't even have my own spotting scope at the time, right? I quickly throw my phone to the spotting scope. I snap a couple pictures. I start looking at the pictures, and I'm like looking at them. And this is where, like, I think a lot of people get overly excited sometimes when they first start sheep hunting, but I'm trying to do whatever I can to make them legal. And they're like 3/4 girl rams, right?
Yeah.
And finally, after like half an hour, these sheep sitting there, I'm like, okay, well, these things are probably 5-6 inches short of being anywhere near full curl.
Yeah. You're trying to grow their horns with your mind.
Yeah, exactly. I'm hoping in this half an hour I can go up there and feed them, and maybe they'll start growing. But it was just super exciting. And right from that moment, I was hooked. Like, that was it. I spent I'd used all my vacation time for that year, but I spent the next couple weekends of the season that were left up there just looking for sheep and getting to know that specific area. And then I talked some more with the guy who's my mentor, and we started talking about, when do you tend to see some of these bigger rams, and try and kind of like you do with elk, right? Try and locate specific bulls. We'll try and locate specific rams, right? And generally in the winter, those rams are going to come down, or in the rut in November, they're going to come down in certain areas. And so I really started spending time. I kind of threw that 2017 deer, like the mule deer rut, the whitetail rut, that went out the window, and I was just fixated on trying to find sheep. And it wasn't open, obviously, right? But I just wanted to find some big rams.
Yeah.
So I spent.
That's a cool tactic, man. Like, I don't know if I've ever heard anybody using that. Like, wait for the big boys to come down and rut to get an idea of who's in the area.
Yeah, I mean, I just gave away my tactic, but no,
I think you want me to make a note to delete it.
I think anyone, like, I think it's important, and not a lot of guys want to dedicate time during hunting season to looking for something that's not open. But I feel like if there's a certain target or a certain goal that you have, then sometimes you got to make a little bit of sacrifices to achieve that. And
for sure.
And so that's what I did. And, I wouldn't say it worked in that first year, but I definitely learned quite a bit of things, and not even just like seeing what was around, but just learning sheep habits and learning what they like to do and where they like to go and all of it. That whole winter leading right into that next spring, I spent quite a bit of time just trying to look at sheep in different areas of the province and just trying to familiarize with myself with what those rams tend to be doing. And I knew it was in the winter, so it wasn't always going to correlate to what sheep are doing in the fall, but it was going to give me a pretty good idea. So into 2018, I'd spent a bit of time out there, and the 2018 season, I had another fly-in booked, and I shot my first caribou on a fly-in trip that September. And
right on.
Came back, and again, it was the same thing as the year before, just boom, right on sheep. And that year, I'd left some time that I could take a little bit of longer trips, and got onto some rams, nothing legal that season. And then I think it was, I want to say it was that winter where not long after, not even winter, it was still the fall. Not long after the season, I was up in that area, or up in the area, and I saw my first what would be legal ram for that area out of season.
Nice.
But in an area where
that must have felt good.
Oh, it was so awesome, man. It was.
You're 2 years in at that point, and now you have your eyes on your first legal ram.
Yeah. Like, I know I can't take them, and it's not the time, but just seeing them and knowing that they're there, it just gives you that feeling of assurance that they actually do exist, and they're not just stories. Right. So that was super, super awesome, and it just drove me to spend even more time out there between 2018 and leading into 2019. And so that's what I really fixated my time on. And then that start of 2019, a couple friends went and did a winter goat hunt, and they took a good pilly. And after that, I was like, I kind of got a little bit of the goat bug and that whole winter goat idea thing too. So I was like, at some point I really want to do that too. And so draws.
Was that Mark and Lauren?
Yeah, Mark and Lauren. And Mark wasn't there. Lauren, Treehern, and Nolan went on that trip. And
cool.
Yeah, so I didn't know Nolan or Treehern at that time really, but I knew Lauren. And so I was talking to him before and after that trip, and it just sounded super awesome. It was something that I definitely wanted to do. So then going
a super good crew of dudes too.
Yeah, that's a pretty stellar crew.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, definitely a tough one to beat. And Lauren's like, I mean, I haven't hunted with Treehern. I don't really know Treehern too well, but I know Nolan. I haven't hunted with him yet, but I know Lauren, and he's like, they're all kind of those like go-getter dudes. Like, hey, no breaks, from what I understand. Like, we're getting over the next prize, and so I can just imagine what that trip must have been good with those guys. And like I said, they took a smoker billy, so that kind of got me hooked. And like, hey, I need to go do this winter goat thing. So so when are we going, boys? Yeah. So that draw season we put in, and I drew a goat tag that went into February. So that kind of started playing into how much time I could spend and take kind of within the fall. But pretty much what I did that year, so 2019, is all the time outside of what I was going to do for a goat hunt, I'm dedicating everything to sheep hunting. And that year was unbelievable. Like, I spent so much time looking for sheep, and early season, late season. That was the first time me and my partner got on a legal ram during season. It didn't work out. It was late September-ish when we got on that ram, and it's a ram that I still try and watch to this day. I haven't caught him again in the season, but hoping to catch up to him one day. But that season, October 15th, I caught up with a different ram that I knew was legal. I just couldn't make a play on him with where he was. And then the 16th was the first time I was able to hold a ram that had just been taken. My hunting partner took a ram that season. And that was
cool.
Yeah. So that was 2019. And that was a 175 bighorn, and just like everything you look for in a sheep. And it just being able to hold a ram, and it's one thing to look at them or hold them at the WSSBC Kamloops convention or at a convention and pick up these skulls, but it's a totally different thing, in my opinion, to actually hold a ram that's just been taken. It was unbelievable. And 2 days later, I got on the same ram I'd seen the day before he took that. Watched him for the next 2 days, and then October 20th, never forget, I made a play on him. I spent 8 hours sitting on my ass in one spot, waiting for him to where I thought he had gone into to pop off. It was in my head that I was going to take my first ram that day, because I thought I had outsmarted them. I thought I had them pinned and bedded, and they were going to pop out. And boy, did I ever have that wrong. They ended up coming out 150 yards. I still to this day don't know behind me, but up in some steep stuff that was pretty timbered. And I had two choices at that point. There was an hour of daylight left, and I could back out, or I could make a play straight at him. And with an hour left, I'm like, I'm going to make the play straight at him. And I climbed up, and I'll never forget, I got to a point where there was two rams. They looked away. I knew one met the legal requirement and one was just short. And they were both broadside, but looking away from me. I couldn't make the call. I didn't feel comfortable taking a shot and picking out which one was which. And I watched both those rams walk away, and I backed out and pulled out. And that was my 2019 season.
I think that's the right call, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to this day.
That's not a coin flip you want.
No.
Yeah, that's not a coin flip you want to be a part of.
No, to this day, I don't. Yeah, to this day, I don't regret it. I actually caught up with that same ram a week later. Out of the season. It was kind of interesting. He was only legal on one side, and he broomed that within that week. He broomed 4 inches, busted it clean off. I still have a picture of him. Yeah, I still have a picture of him on my phone. Super cool. I got to within 30 yards of him that week after the season. But that really got me super excited for the year to come. So that would have been leading into 2020, which is when I had that goat hunt booked for. So that was last February.
Yep.
We went on that goat hunt, and that's just a totally different kind of hunt. Winter goats, just totally different. I mean, I was super blessed, super lucky on that trip in terms of how everything played out. But I took Billy on the first day of the trip, just a stellar,
nice
51 and 4/8. He's just shy of 11 inches, stellar Billy. And that was a super special moment. And being in that country at that time of the year is definitely something that's super different. That trip, we didn't spend a whole lot of time up there, but loved every minute of it.
When I was talking to Treehern about doing the winter goat thing, I was like, yeah, it's not for me. Yeah, no, it's not for me. I got so much other stuff I need to do.
It's to each their own, right? It's one of those things, you can hunt goats. We're so lucky here. You can hunt goats from August to February in our province. Where can you go that you've got 7 months to hunt goats? It's insane.
Well, where else can you go to hunt over-the-counter goats?
Yeah, other than Alaska. Not really anywhere, eh?
And can we even hunt them? I don't think we can hunt them as non-residents, can we? Non-resident aliens.
In Alaska? No. I'm just sorry. I just meant as residents of Alaska, they can go and hunt them.
Yeah.
But I guess that's that's a totally separate subject, but we're so blessed in BC that
we're very lucky, I think is what we're both saying.
Yeah. And it's actually kind of funny at how many people don't realize how privileged we are to have the opportunities to hunt all these species over the counter. People just they don't even think twice about it.
Oh, dude, it's crazy. I mean, like I was telling you, we're going on this goat hunt in August, and I've been doing research on this area for, going on 6 months now. And the amount of dudes that you would think have like been on goat hunts, like haven't. And like hardly anybody's been on goat hunts. Like it's only a handful of people that I know in my circles. And I know a ton of hunters that have taken goats,
Yeah.
But we are super lucky. I mean, we're in one of the few places you can just dial up a biologist that works in that area and talk to them.
Oh yeah. And our biologists here in BC are super cool. They're super cool. We got some stellar bios here. When you look up into you look at, if we're talking mountain goats and sheep, Bill Jacks, right? Like how blessed are we?
Yeah. I've been chatting with Bill.
Yeah. So
after convention season ends here, I think Bill's going to come on and chat with me for a bit.
Awesome. That'll be a great conversation. I've been emailing Bill quite a bit not quite a bit, but a bit back and forth, just because of the goat count for the summer. And
cool.
He's fully locked onto that, and he's excited about that too. So, super awesome guy.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait to go on it.
Yeah, it's so much. I can't believe what that's turned into. That's just grown huge. People are super excited about it. I'm super excited about it. It's going to be an awesome event.
Yeah, I saw the Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance is on board now with it too. Yeah. How many people do you have signed up to come out and count?
84 when I checked this evening. So, yeah, man, I was expecting 40, so we're up to 84 at this point. And I think by the end of June, with restrictions that we're seeing right now, we should be okay. Hopefully everything's opened up, and if not, we'll find a way to make it work. I mean, we're still going to get into the mountains.
How are you guys going to we're getting off track here, but how are you guys going to allocate who's going where?
So I've set, or Justin Balzer and I have set, or Grizzly, if everyone calls him, but we've set 12 separate spots so far. Yeah, Grizz. We set 12 separate spots so far that we'll send groups into, and the groups will vary between 4 and 6 guys. And then we're going to have all different levels of, how hard do you really want to get after it? Because we got some 3,000 foot climbs that are going to be mixed in there. And then we've got some that are going to be 4x4 access. So, we've got enough spots.
That's fun country back there, man.
I haven't spent a ton of time, but the more guys I talk to, like, oh yeah, I've been back in here and I've seen goats in here and I've seen goats in here. And I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. Like, can't wait.
Yeah. There's some rough ass country back there too, man. Like we chase blacktail in there, and I don't know if you saw on my story the other day, I had my eldest daughter out with me packing salt and cameras back there.
Okay, yeah.
And we're like 4 kilometers from the truck post holing the whole way, and she wouldn't let me carry her because she's like her father and stubborn as hell. And yeah, man, it's thick and steep. It's a cool spot. Like that whole mountain range is nasty.
Yeah. So I've got enough spots for 60 guys of what Justin and I preset now. So now we've kind of got the option to either move a little further east, or grow group size. So we've got some time. We're going to look at some of the options and see what we can do in terms of that. And I think either way, it's going to be a great event.
Yeah, it'd be rad. Be cool to set up some camp locations where we could all pitch tents and then bail out in the mornings.
That's the plan. We're doing actually, I guess this will be the first people hear about it, but we're doing I don't know if I want to call it a Friday fun night, but it's going to be we're doing, a full cookout on the Friday where guys can roll in. We're going to have some different stuff going on. We're hoping to have some campfire stories, do a little bit of that. And then we're going to, the idea is I'm trying to get a projector. We're going to show some films starting with, go ahead.
I got projectors.
Oh, perfect. That's got that covered. Great. Yeah. Cause we want to show
I'm on it.
Awesome. That works. Cause I want to show that, RMGA, the identification film, that 10-minute one. And then we'll show a couple other films that guys can watch just with sunset there. And then move that into campfire stories and get a good fire going, as long as there's no campfire bans. Right. after a good meal, and then everyone could tuck in for that night. And Saturday, it's time to get after it.
Yeah.
And guys are gonna.
You should be good back there.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll figure out a good central location, because we're gonna have a couple guys going that are gonna have to hit the highway and kind of rip up towards Jones and come in from that side as well. So I want to keep it pretty central where guys don't have a 3-hour drive or something. But we'll figure it out. We got a spot in mind already.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man. That's super exciting. That's cool that you and Grizz there are doing that and getting it organized. And it'd be cool to find out what's going on back there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a couple year progress in terms of what we count on this one, what it shows compared to that last survey they did quite a while back, and that was a winter survey. And then moving forward with counts in the future and what needs to be done, like what could be causing this decline in the goat population down there that they have seen over the last 30 years. Is it human wildlife conflict? Is it wildlife conflict? Is it habitat loss? Like what is it? Something's got to be up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. When was the last count back there?
It was 2013 or 2014. It was an aerial winter survey that was done.
Oh, wow. Much more recent than I thought it was. I thought it was like a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, still like 8 years ago. That's not a lot can change in 8 years, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Like that's a full.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's a full generation of goats.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So getting back to Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we left off. You finished off that season and didn't take the coin flip on the sheep, which was good.
Yeah, definitely. And then went on that goat hunt. I took that billy. That was the February 2020. Moved into spring. I got the year before that, even actually, I got super switched on to doing spring bear in the area where I sheep hunt. Just like I want to take some of the bears out of. Yeah, take some of the bears out and, maybe take a little bit of the pressure off some of the lambs. So last spring, I spent quite a bit of time in there and took some bears out of there. And then moving into that season, last season was supposed to be a big stone sheep hunt I had planned. And because of some family and personal reasons, I had to call that on 2 weeks notice, which sucked. But sometimes life gets in the way of things. And so I kind of canceled that. And I was like, I need to do something. We'll get onto it anyways. But I booked a trip to Alberta for November. So kind of made up for not going stone sheep hunting by booking something else. But
what were you chasing in Alberta?
Whitetail. Yeah, went and chased whitetail in I guess just out of not far from Red Deer, in that general area. I mean, a little ways out of it. It was a guided trip and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. That's wicked. How did you like that compared to BC?
Oh, dude, it's just totally different. Like it's night and day, in my opinion. I mean, when you're hunting private land, because that's what a lot of it was.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of that area in Alberta is private.
Yeah. And I didn't as Canadian residents, there were some good deals to be had on hunts this year. And I was like, I'm going to take advantage of that. And so totally different. And the quality of deer and the amount of deer you're seeing out there and their management is just so much better. Like they're managing for quality out there versus quantity, right? And the outfitter we were with pretty much has sole permission on most of these properties that we're hunting, and he manages it to have that quality. So bucks that you would take in a heartbeat here in BC, day one, morning one, we're letting walk. That evening, we're letting walk, and it was super cool. I missed the biggest whitetail I've ever seen in my life. I'll never live that one down. But
hey, that happened to me in Alberta.
It's just part of hunting, right? You grow from it, you learn from it.
I think it's a good part of hunting, man. I think if they were all slam dunks, we would be different dudes,
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think we'd enjoy it as much. I don't think we'd want to go out there if it was always a slam dunk. And if you were coming home every time with something, you wouldn't want to. I think
you'd get bored, maybe.
You'd get bored. I think as humans, we kind of live for a bit of a challenge in some senses. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest reasons that sheep hunting is getting super popular again, or has been super popular, is just that level of challenge, right? And I think people really, really enjoy that. But yeah, I mean, Alberta is just super, super awesome. I'm definitely going back. Like I'm counting down the days till I go back. I think it'll be next year. So, and we took
it's a cool spot, man. I like, people always ask me about Alberta, and it's like, it's hard to explain because it's just such a far departure from what we have here. I don't know if I would call it better. I would just call it like completely different. It's a different game. Like where I was in Alberta, it's like super target rich. You're doing a lot of stalks. You're getting after it, but it's not. It's a different game to me, you know. Like the success rate where I was is very low with a bow, right?
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So,
I mean,
that's a factor for sure.
Anytime you're taking the bow out, I think that success rate drops very, very drastically. So,
yeah, I mean, we were talking to Jeff Lander from Primitive. He guides in the area that I hunt down there, and he was saying like he thinks those deer are the most switched on deer like anywhere. Yeah. Just because they get so much pressure, because it's over the counter for bow, and it's like it's a super hard tag to draw with a rifle, right? So the pressure is just dudes running around in QU flinging Easton arrows at them all year long, right?
Yeah. Is that a shot at us QU guys?
No,
I know.
I'm just kidding. Don't worry. I missed him the same. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Even talking to my outfitter, like he was saying the same thing about some of those areas in Alberta where he's hunted with the bow, just because he hasn't drawn it yet, and he's talking like 180 to 200 inch mule deer. I mean, are not something that you're surprised to see, is the way he made it sound. You see 180 to 200 inch mule deer in British Columbia, and your fucking jaws hitting the ground pretty quick.
Well, if you saw that deer out here, nobody would believe you either.
True enough. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? You're like, you tell a story and you change it from a 160 to a 210. You're like, okay, bud. Like, no, you didn't.
Yeah, like for sure.
Like that's not what happened. But out there, like, I mean, Wasey saw literally the biggest deer he's ever seen in his life. He said the biggest mule deer he's ever seen. And I was like, cool, that's a big mule deer. I'm going. Cause like I had never seen a deer that big. All of those deer were the biggest deer I had seen in my life up until the point I saw the next biggest deer that day, you know, like
it's insane.
The quality was insane.
Yeah. My mentor there that had taken that ram in 2019, he did a guided Alberta mule deer hunt this year and in southern Alberta. And he was shooting me pictures like day one. I don't know I can't remember exactly how it worked, but I think he was there a day before the season. I don't know how exactly the logistics of it, but he shot me pictures of these two bucks that are just cruising this open piece of property. And I'm like, I had no words. I'm like, are you like, you just snapped those pictures? He's like, yeah, season doesn't open till tomorrow. I'm like, wow. He's like, which one's the target buck do you think? I'm like, either one. Like you're looking at 195 inch straight 4, or you're looking at 185 inch, you know, like a little bit of crab clawed and a gnarly buck. And late November still had its velvet. It's ended up being the buck he took, like a mid 180s, kind of a gnarly buck that was still holding velvet and had all this stuff hanging off it. Just
weird.
Some of the pictures he sent me of deer after that, I'm just like, that's unbelievable. And you're seeing that in a week, and multiple deer over that 180 into 190. And
I've told this story on here before, but I dropped into the wrong bowl on these. I was dropping on these two big mature muleys, but I dropped into the next bowl behind them, and you know, you look over and there's 30 sets of eyeballs staring at you. I'm like, this is just sick. This is just like, this isn't right. Like, where am I? What planet is this?
No, but I mean, you got to come back from a trip like that. And like, even when I came back from my trip, it's just like, whether you take something or not, just wanting to get back out there and just experience that all over again. Right. Like,
oh yeah. You know what?
It's so awesome.
it did fire me up though to hunt different country in BC. Cause I find like I get locked into like one thing and one thing only. Like I go so hard on like, southern BC elk that like I completely forget, oh, hey, we have alpine muley here. We have like lots of open country. We have like northern BC. Like there's all this other stuff to do, you know, and there's all this other terrain to learn and you know, going out there and driving through BC, I was like, man, I got to hunt the rest of this stuff too. Like I got to hunt everything.
Yeah, that's kind of just it too, and making sure that you got so much time to do it too. I set a goal for myself where I'm like, I want to take my Super 10 by the end of my, like the year I turned 30, by the end of that season, my goal is to take my Super 10. And so I'm halfway there, and I've taken the two of what I thought were going to be the hardest on that. And so, that's my goal. I got 5 seasons to do it now.
Well, I think you're well on your way.
Yeah,
so you ended up connecting with a ram shortly after, I think, 21, right? Or no, 20.
Oh, 20. Yeah, 20. Yeah, so I started 20 that fall of 20 with I did an archery elk hunt out into the Coots. Just because I wanted to try that any bull archery thing, and I ended up taking my first whitetail with the bow, just a small buck, but it was like a spot and stock whitetail that I was super proud of to take my first animal with the bow. That was super
awesome.
cool. Yeah, and then that was like first week of September, and right after that was done, I switched back onto the bighorns, and the rest, I got out. I kind of changed it. Instead of taking a lot of time off right at the early season, I planned it that I was going to take off a big chunk of time mid-season and then a big chunk of time right at the end of the season. And then just little periods of weekends before that. And so I saw some nice rams kind of going into that mid-season 10 days I had. And a buddy of mine had messaged me. He had taken a stone this year, and there was an area he's been super interested in, and me and him have been talking about it. It's like, you want to just, I had 10 days. He's like, you want to just take 5 days and we'll head up into this spot and camp out for 5 days and just see what it looks like. So we did.
Yeah.
We ended up pulling out a day early because we didn't even see a ewe in 4 days, and just nothing that really got us super excited. Super nice country, but just nothing that got us excited. And pulled out a day early, went into a different spot that we both knew about. Saw some nice rams, and we got on a ram that the morning we got on him in the evening. That evening, I was 99% sure he was legal. Got on him first thing in the morning. I made my play. I got to within 70 yards, and he was too close to make the call. So I pulled out. We backed out. The ram actually ended up getting taken, I don't know, probably about a month later by a LEH holder. And it ended up being, I think it was a 1/4 inch shy of what would have been the legal requirement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So an LEH holder took it. So it was totally cool. He had a 3/4 tag. So it was good. It was great. But it definitely wasn't a ram that it made the right call. And, but anyway, 2 days after that play, buddy had headed home, and I was by myself, and I headed into an area that I know pretty well and have spent quite a bit of time in. And, I glassed up a ram 2 days later, right at last light, that I knew, you look at an animal, especially sheep, and for me, I'd spent so much time looking at them, and there's something that you just know. Like when you look at a ram, for me, I just know I need to give this ram a better look. And I was 1,800 yards away from him when I glassed him up in my 10 by 42s, threw the spotter on him. And I was like, okay. So I was in there first thing the next morning, glassed him up from a distance again, made the play. I was on the sheep by 1:00 that afternoon. But again, just like so many times before, I couldn't get the right angle on the sheep. I ended up being on him till 5:45. So from 1 to 5:45, I was within 200 yards of these 4 rams. Waiting for the look I needed and trying to and I got kind of stuck into a spot where I couldn't get any lower. It was just too steep and too dangerous. So I was a bit above him, and I'll never forget, about 5:40, 5:45, he gets up, and he walks around this little finger ridge, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like thinking, all right, that's the end of this story. And to like my dismay, like he pops out 60 feet above where he had gone in behind this ridge, and he turns, and they knew I was there. Like they had busted me at 1:00 when I first seen them. But I just, with sheep, I found they're not the most spookish animal. If you don't present an immediate threat, I tend to find that they can get comfortable with you there. They aren't gonna, they're not like an elk or a mule deer or a whitetail where they're gone.
Yeah, they're not gone.
Yeah. So if you can make them comfortable, and just play the wind right, and make slow movements, you're gonna be okay. So like I said, for 4.5 hours, I just tucked down, laid down, had my spotter set up so that they could probably catch the spotter if the sun hit it. But that was really it. And finally at 5:45, he came up on that spot a little higher up. He looked at me face on, and then he turned and gave me the look. I mean, he's right here, but he gave me the look where I seen, the far side of his horn coming up above, or coming up to where I needed it to. And dropped him right there. And
nice.
He took a bit of a fall. I tried to get to him that night, but it got way too dark on me super quick. So first thing in the morning, I was right on to where I felt safe in the dark, sitting there with my headlamp, like, all right, waiting for the sun to come up. And I was on him. I had my hands on him by 7.
Longest hour of your life.
Oh, it was brutal, man. I'm like, most days you're like, you don't mind like sleeping in or letting the time come a little slower. That day, I'm like, I can't, this light cannot come quick enough. But I was on him by 7:45, and that was one of the most, emotional moments I've ever had in the field. Just putting my hands on that wrapper on him and pulling him out of the dirt. And I don't know, I probably sat there for an hour and a half, just taking it all in, snapping pictures, and just fully immersing myself in it. That was super cool. And that's one of my, without a doubt, my greatest hunting accomplishment, if you will. Is taking that round.
Nice.
So 2 days to get him out by myself. And then, I just pulled out of there and I went back to my base camp. And for 2 days I drank by myself, enjoyed it, just had a time, just lived in the moment, and, came down and took him to, my mentor's place there, just cause he was actually supposed to be up there at that time, but he had some stuff kind of come up and he wasn't able to make it, and took him there right away. Cool. And it was kind of funny. He still got the ram from 2019. He's waiting for the tanner to get him his cape back, but we pulled them both out. We sat them on the table next to each other, and we're like, 2 rams, 2 years in a row. It was super awesome. And, I hope we get to do that a few more times for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So what made you, so I didn't realize this. I thought you were chasing Callies. What made you go for Rockies? That's a hell of a lot further than Callies from where we live.
I want to take my BC Slam, and everyone that I've talked to has always said that for most people that live where we do, your Rocky's going to be the hardest, other than, pulling a tag for your doll. So I figured if I could knock the hardest off the list first, make it a little bit easier. Time will tell if I made the right approach with that. I mean, kicked myself out of the less than one club, so that's a good start. But we'll see. I mean, now it's time to focus on Cali. So anyone who's listening to this that hunts Callies, I might be seeing you in the mountains sometime soon.
Nice. Yeah, man. Rockies are one of those ones that guys out here, you don't hear about guys chasing Rockies that often. I guess I just assumed that you had killed a Cali, and I don't think I had ever seen the photos really and looked, but no, that's cool, man. The Rockies are something to really admire, eh? That's cool.
Oh, I love the look of a Rocky versus they're pretty similar into the, to the untrained eye. Most guys don't realize, but generally, if you look at a character Rocky versus a character Cali, I personally prefer the Rockies. The way they kind of remind me a little bit of a stone sheep, and they come in and then they tend to flare a little more, where those Calis come out wider and tend to broom back a little more.
Yeah.
But all the sheep are so, they're beautiful animals. They're so cool animals.
Yeah, they're so wicked. So what's next? I mean, it's almost bear o'clock here, and
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like you need to be taking bears out of rocky country since you're going somewhere else. So what's the plan?
Oh, I'm going to take 2 bears this year. I don't have a rifle right now. Like I've got 2 rifles, and I just made this decision like literally in the last 2 weeks that I'm going to build a full custom. And
Nice.
so I'm getting rid of my rifles and go into this full custom that's going to take a little while for me to put together. And so I was like, I'm going to try and take 2 bears this season with the bow. Like that's my goal.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've got a spot that I took a bear out of like April 12th last year. So super early.
Cool.
So I'm thinking I might try and get on them. I mean, I'm going to head out for the long weekend and try and get on bears super early.
Nice.
And
beauty.
Try and do that. And then I really want to do the turkey thing this year. I don't know why.
Yeah. We see in chatter all fired up about turkeys too. I haven't exactly got excited about it yet. I will be going, but I have a feeling I'm going to be looking for bears.
Yeah. I mean, it just, you want to take a bear over like just for taking the meat. I mean, you get so much more meat off a bear than you're going to get a turkey, but yeah. I think it'd be just super cool to hunt turkeys and just get on a box call and try and call them in. I mean, especially if you're an elk hunter, right? And you like calling elk or calling in bulls, kind of the same idea in some sense, I guess.
Yeah. People say that, They say they're like chasing elk the way that you call them and stuff like that.
Yeah. I've played a little bit with a box call, and I did a little bit of turkey hunting last spring, nothing major, like maybe a couple days, but this year I'm like, I'm going to give it a shot just in the fall. And I do want to focus a bit more on bears just because I haven't been doing a whole lot of training, and I'm going to do a stone sheep hunt this year. So at least if I'm chasing bears, I feel like it'll be a little bit better on my conditioning, but
nice.
As opposed to sitting at the base of a tree calling turkeys.
Yeah, I feel you. I'm definitely not quite in goat shape yet, but have to work towards that.
Yeah.
What's your fall looking like? So you're going on a stone sheep hunt?
Yeah, I'm going to do 16 days. I feel like, in my opinion, any northern hunt, you want to try and get at least 10 days. I'm going to try and do 15, 16 days in for stones. Nice. I'm still kind of up in the air in a couple spots. I mean, I've been looking at stone locations since I started bighorn hunting in 2017. And I'm really struggling to pick a spot right now. So I might even, I don't know what I'm going to do. I keep going back and forth on where I want to hit. And it's one of those things that it's like, well, you're young enough that you can hit them all over the next 10 years, but I keep getting caught up on where am I going to go to start it off. But, and then,
well, fire up a poll on your Instagram. Ask the folks at home where you should.
I'll just throw GPS locations. Should I hunt this spot?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Where are the stones?
Yeah, and then every spot I go into is going to have an extra 6 or 7 guys hanging out at the base of the mountain.
You're going to have to change your Instagram handle to Hunt and Fool.
No doubt, that's
brutal.
Yeah.
And then after stones, you're going to try to chase callies, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, if I take a stone, I'm going to be doing some elk hunting. I'm actually this spring, I'm going to set some cabins up and do a little bit more recon on some elk. So if I do take a stone, it'll be elk. If I don't take a stone, I'll be chasing callies.
Nice. Well, if you dive down the elk rabbit hole, I want to hear about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's my, I got some friends out in one of the areas in BC, and they take bulls every year, or someone within the group takes a bull. Not everyone's taken consistently, but so I got a little bit of a handle on that, and I think it'd be cool to take an elk. And if I want to take my Super 10, I've got to take a bull within the next 5 years. So it's kind of part of my goal
for sure.
So,
that's wicked, man. Well, I think that gives people a good taste of Jeff here, and let's check back in with you in the short term. Let's maybe after the spring we'll check back in, or maybe closer to goat count time. We'll hear more about that.
Yeah, for sure, man. Just at the end of the spring there, reconnect and chat some more.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to kind of hear the results of the goat count, man. It's going to be exciting, especially because it's like right in our backyard.
Oh yeah, it's going to be super interesting, and I've had to make sure that I'm telling guys, hey, like I hope you're not coming out expecting to see goats. Like that's not what this is about. Like,
Yeah,
you know, if we go out there and between 80 guys, you know, we're able to pick out 25, 30 goats on the mountain, well, in my eyes, that's a huge success. So,
yeah,
I'm just making sure I'll try to be pretty clear with guys on that, you know, this isn't going to be a come out and you're going to see goats for sure.
Yeah. I bet there's more goats back there than we think, though. I've heard some funny stories recently, and I'll have to tell you after we get off this, but there's some interesting stories out there floating around about them guys.
I hope you're right. Like, I hope we go out there and, you know, we're surprised. I don't want to get guys super excited to, you know, yeah.
Do you know what that 2013 count yielded?
I'm sure I could pull it up. I don't have it right in front of me now. I've been trying to go back and forth with the bio. I don't know. It was the overall has been that since the season closed in the 80s, the population there has just been in a constant decline. Not like a drastic decline, but it's a slow decline.
Yeah. So, you know, I have an interesting guy for you to talk to. I know a guy that did that hunt.
Really?
Yeah. I met him on one of the mountains here, actually.
Wow. And he took a goat out of
there. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He's in his, I don't know, mid 60s probably.
Interesting. Yeah. That'd be a super cool, that'd be someone super cool to talk to.
Yeah. He's an interesting cat. I've been trying to get him on here, but he's not that into doing it. He listens to all these things. Hi, Tom. But he's not that interested in doing it, but I'll keep harassing him.
Yeah. He'd be super cool to have on it, or super cool to even chat to if he was open to chat. But I mean, there's these guys, there's these people that, you know, have done that hunt, and even, you know, the Sea to Sky, the region, you know, the Squamish goats, there's some people in there that have hunted them and been successful in doing so. And, I mean, just what you hear about, you know, being able to hunt mountain goats in your backyard is, in my opinion, is super cool.
Pretty wicked. Yeah. For sure, man. Cool. Well, hey, thanks for doing this. And we'll stay in touch here and keep everybody in the loop with what's going on with you.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and follow us on Instagram @WildernessLocals, or check out the gear at our website, www.wildernesslocals.net.